Today, we'll be talking about building a business case for employee engagement. Building a business case can be the most important part of developing your engagement strategy. Q4 is the budgeting season, and many of you may be working toward establishing a budget, and we'll be talking through some of the trends that companies are experiencing in doing so. We're also going to quickly give an overview on developing an engagement measurement philosophy, what's involved in designing your program. And then if we have time, we're going to focus on some more 201, 301 elements of an engagement program, things like data, anonymity, and driving action based on your insights. So first thing that we wanted to cover today is addressing the world we live in today. 2020 has been quite a year, from COVID-19 to furloughs and homeschooling. There have been safety concerns and mental health issues in the workplace. There's been a lot of turbulence. And, because of that, it's never been more important than gathering employee feedback and measuring employee engagement, both at, the aggregate level, company-wide, and looking at, what the trends are throughout your organization, but also looking at individuals. And we'll talk about how that relates to your engagement strategy. The second thing we want to note here is that, we're still in the midst of, a lot of change. We're going to look at some metrics that will show why, exactly, the change that a few examples of the change we're going through. But this is the change curve that was developed in the 1960s. And this just shows that at the bottom phase of change, we have depression. And a lot of our clients and the companies and executives we're working with today, are really interested in looking at how do we take this lower energy state and really shift into a state of motivation. And a key part of that will be how you engage your employees. In order to understand how to engage your employees and how you'll be able to shift again from this low energy state to this high motivation state, you need data. And that's what we're here today talking about. Employee feedback is critical. The reality is that 2 out of 3 workers still feel uncomfortable returning to the workplace. And a lot of that's driven by health concerns as well as uncertainty in the future. Let's first take a deeper dive around uncertainty. At the worst point in the crisis with coronavirus, over 96% of children that were in schools were impacted, meaning, those that were in schools, roughly 54.5 million children were impacted with a shift in going to school on campus to remote learning. And for parents, this was a stressful situation that continues today. While 60% of parents are likely to continue with home-based learning through the next year, depending on where you live and depending on, legislation, there are many places where school has returned to 100% capacity. And, the fact of the matter is that there's a lot of, regardless of where you are on the, the future in terms of, how to school your kids, there's a lot of fear and uncertainty. Not to mention, we are in the midst of a huge mental health crisis. Well-being is an area that's trending within our clients and the surveys that they're doing with Workify. But there's lots of research and data that shows that this is a national problem, if not a global problem. So with all that said, in today's world, the case for engagement, should be a very easy one to make. Although, there always are leaders that are resistant to investing in what they view as non-business critical areas. There is a clear case for why this is business critical, and it's never been more critical given everything that's going on in the world. Some common leadership objections, things need to settle down. Things are too crazy right now. We need to wait and let things settle down from COVID-19. The reality is, we're 6 months in, and most employees are dying to provide feedback to their employers. There's still hybrid workplace that most companies are operating in, meaning some employees are on site. Most employees are still working remotely. There are a lot of changes that have not been clarified in terms of, the employee-manager relationship. And so, there's been plenty of time to let things settle, but, we see those that are kind of leading the charge and getting ahead in terms of getting employee feedback before things settle down are the ones that are putting themselves in best position to take action. So what about the others? Oh, we can't justify the costs. The costs that we'll go over in the typical business case for employee engagement, are they're meaningful and they're compelling. And so whereas the savings are compelling and meaningful, whereas the costs, in the grand scheme of things, are not huge costs. And so, that's no longer really a relevant argument when, people, are your most important asset. And we're talking, relatively minor investment to get better tools. Won't our people get survey fatigue? We've sent a lot of surveys. This has not been the case. And we have seen that, in fact, this is not the case, where, there were informal channels to gather feedback. Employees no longer have, in-person one-on-ones and coffee catch-ups with their managers and teammates. And so the ability to have any form of channel into the company to provide feedback is appreciated right now. And so survey fatigue, it just isn't a thing, especially in today's, in the workplace today. As far as engagement and its impacts to the bottom line, so we're going to look at both the bottom line impact and the top line impact. You can see here that there are clear metrics that reinforce that there is a clear connection between employee engagement and the bottom line, whether we look on the cost side in the form of regrettable terminations. We are entering a market that is going to be very tricky. While there may be labor on the market that's hireable, given the nature of how we're working today, onboarding is a lot more difficult. Being able to get employees quickly up to speed is a lot more challenging. And so keeping your most important hires is absolutely critical. And whether it's sales or operations, the fact of the matter is this isn't a day that you want to be having regrettable terminations. And on average, they can cost companies 6 to 9 months their average salary. That in itself could fund the cost of an engagement survey, engagement measurement program. But you can see here there are other metrics that we won't go into, but these will all help build the business case from a sales standpoint to returning return customers. There are a lot of ways that you should be able to easily connect engagement to your bottom line. And let's look revenues. So let's look at the top line. And we're looking at one measure here that isn't technically employee engagement. It's more related to employee satisfaction, and that's employee net promoter score. And most companies are tracking some form of customer satisfaction or net promoter score. Employee net promoter score is the cousin, so to speak, to NPS, and it's measuring internal employee satisfaction. And you can see here that that there is a statistically strong correlation between eNPS and NPS, meaning the higher, more highly satisfied your employees are with their experience, the more highly your customer the more high scoring your customer satisfaction will be. And as a result, in relation to that, rather, we've also looked at other kind of measures, and you can see here that that this correlation of R equals 0.43, is very high compared to some other pretty compelling comparisons. So So this should all be helpful in you crafting the message. The last thing that we want to look at here is, as far as companies that are investing in their employee experience, there is a clear outperformance to those that have not, in terms of profitability, in the sense that companies that invest in their employee experience are found to be up to 4 times as profitable than companies that don't invest. And so, again, another compelling metric from if your management team prefers to speak in the profitability language. This next slide that we're looking at is really summarizing the emerging landscape. All of these bubbles represent an important part of the HR architecture, the work technology architecture that's emerging. And you can see the green bubble, engagement measurement. This includes things like, an annual or biannual or semi-annual engagement survey. It includes pulse surveys. It includes active and passive collection of employee feedback. And you can see that it's at the heart of all of the other bubbles. And the reason for this is that if, as the management saying goes, if you can't measure it, you can't improve it. And so the idea being that with engagement measurement, seeing as the focus is data collection and analytics around that data, it really it's the core of your decision making. And without having this, meaningful data set in place, it can be like throwing spaghetti against a wall. And so it really should be a key pillar in your strategy for moving to a data-driven decision-making process within HR. And if that's not enough, in terms of building the business case, we are still in the midst of a global pandemic. The reality is that we're still working through the changes and the impact of COVID-19, and we'll continue to do so. And this is going to be a transformation that some believe will last for decades. And the winners of this situation that we're in today are going to be the companies that are moving from defense to offense and are starting to look at how they can adapt, how they can change their business, how they can change their operating models and the workplace, and move into this new normal so they can begin to attack new markets and to emerge as a stronger business. So we're quickly now going to look at the components of an employee feedback philosophy. One quick objection that we hear is, well, why aren't we just going to, download a free software, a SurveyMonkey, a Google Forms to measure this and to do all the things that you're saying are meaningful to our business. Well, the reality is that those are survey tools with survey functionality. Engagement is much more than that. And so we're going to quickly look at what's included and what's involved in an engagement measurement program, so that you can understand and help articulate to your leadership team why this isn't as easy as just sending a one-time SurveyMonkey out to your employees. And really, it starts with the end goal. And, the engagement is a concept that I think all leaders can stand behind. And, what we advise doing when we work with our clients is really getting to a definition that makes sense for your business. The way that Workify defines engagement is that it's a motivational construct that involves the discretionary effort or the level of involvement an employee puts to their work or at work, in terms of, physically, cognitively, and emotionally, those 3 levels, how are they contributing to their level of involvement in their job and at work? By defining employee engagement, you can then start to identify what the most important factors are to your business as it relates to employee engagement. We've worked closely with IO psychologists to identify 6 key indicators or factors that, really are the predictors of engagement that we are looking to measure and then give our clients rather an indication whether engagement is strengthening or weakening within their businesses. And the 6 that we look at are communication, leadership, resources, management, and dedication and challenge. These are just ours. You can obviously work within your talent management function, or you can hire consultants, or do your own research to identify what your factors are. But we believe that first, you need to have a clear definition of engagement. You then need to have factors that really represent the key areas that you're going to measure as you work through your program. And so that's a key component, because as you'll see, we will then identify questions that relate to the factors. But we also recommend having critical numbers. Most businesses operate with some degree of key performance indicators as a measure in terms of whether or not the business is improving. And for engagement, we believe you should do the same. ENPS, Employee Net Promoter Score. Again, this isn't necessarily an engagement measurement. It's employee satisfaction, but the simplicity of having one question with one number makes it an easy critical number to include in your KPIs, particularly since it's a language that many executives speak, since you're looking at Net Promoter Score on the customer-facing side. So whether it's ENPS or maybe it's retention, we are big fans of asking a retention question. How likely, or I plan on staying at, insert company name for the next 0 to 3 months, 3 to 6 months, et cetera, et cetera. And by understanding how long your employees intend to stay at the company, you're going to have a really good forecast or view into how engaged are they. And so by looking at retention, you can begin to understand what does the future look like in terms of your people and your ability to retain your key talent. And by looking at ENPS, you're looking at, advocates. We know how long our people are planning to stay. Are these people advocates for our brand? And if those two things are strong, then we believe that's, a good leading indication of whether or not your employees are engaged. But you shouldn't stop there. And we'll look at questions here in a second, because that's going to be, the core engagement questions are going to tie back to the indicators that we talked about. But first, let's talk about frequency. And I love this slide. The reality is the vast majority of companies are still, if they're measuring engagement, they're only doing it once a year. And, there are things that should happen once a year, but employee engagement and measuring, how engaged the organization is not one of those. Your business is moving in a more frequent cadence. At a minimum, you're operating in quarterly cycles, and you need to get a better sense, a more frequent sense, a pulse as to how your employees are feeling. Here you can see here, this supports that most companies still are working on an annual cadence in terms of engagement surveys. One key reason why the engagement survey, the annual survey, is inadequate. Well, we talked about, the way that your business is running. The modern business it's much more agile and things are moving quickly. But it's not only that. The other thing to take note of is that, the longer your feedback has a shelf life. So the longer it takes you to action your feedback, the less value the business is going to get out of that action. And so you can see here, it's just a simple curve that was put together to show, again, that and most companies are taking multiple months. And you can see here, there's a big drop off in the value of that feedback with a true engagement measurement approach and a tool that supports that is agile, that is fast. You'll be able to action feedback within weeks, not months and months and months. Like, some companies, by the time they get their data back, it's, 3 months. By the time they've circulated through the organization, we're talking 6 months. So, as surprising as it may sound, some companies are taking 9 to 12 months to take action on their feedback, and that just won't work. That will put you in this vicious cycle of, the team hates completing the surveys, because we're only doing one a year. So they're very long surveys. And then we just talked about how long it takes to action those surveys. And what we do action doesn't stick because the business has moved on, which then results in the management view of, oh, wow, like, why are we, distracting our valuable resources with doing this survey that no one really wants to be a part of. There is a better way. And so, by moving to a modern engagement measurement approach, you will get yourself out of this rut. You will allow yourself to take action on your feedback in a way that will actually have valuable and meaningful results. And so some of the questions that you should be asking yourself in preparation for your leadership meetings, what are the pillars of your feedback strategy? So why are you doing this? Do you have critical numbers, and what are those? Why would those make sense to your business? And what other moments matter in terms of gathering feedback? Are your leaders particularly worried about exit surveys and what people are saying on their way out? Are your employers more concerned about your ability to onboard new talent? So these are the things that you should be calling out as you're formalizing your strategy. And, again, if you need help in building the business case or, getting answers to some of these questions, it's your first time, it can be difficult. We would be happy to conduct a 2-hour consultative workshop with you, you and one of our engagement experts at Workify. So let's go into more of the specifics around designing a program. The role of HR, has been changing over the last decade, 2 decades, and continues to evolve. We love this quote: the role of HR is shifting from a data gatherer to data interpreter. This is just, so spot on. For decades and decades, HR was considered an administrative back office function, to push papers, hire, fire. And the reality is that HR, continues to evolve into a more strategic function. There are, this service profit kind of concept, culture and engagement. There's literally VPs of culture and engagement now. That you never would have heard of that, 6-8 years ago. And the reason for this is because increasingly executives know the value of culture. They know how important, people are to the profit engine. And as a result, want HR to really spend time, increasing amounts of time on analytics and developing strategies that will help better the organization and help take things forward. And engagement measurement, employee feedback, is a critical asset in making that happen. So what kind of feedback? Feedback is a very broad topic. We see in the market that there are multiple pillars or channels of feedback. We're going to be talking mainly about engagement and pulse surveys. Engagement survey is a company-wide survey. It's longer in nature, depending on the number of factors or the predictors of engagement, which again should tie to your definition of engagement. But based on the number of indicators, that really should drive the number of questions that you have. We feel that an engagement survey should be well indexed, meaning it should be balanced between the number of things that you're wanting to measure, and it's intentional. It's a larger effort. Usually, it's the company. Multiple departments and resources throughout the company are getting involved, from marketing to the chief of staff. To the operations group, and so on and so on. And so that is an engagement survey. And there's also pulse surveys. So these are more topical in nature. They could go to the entire company. They could go to specific groups. they're shorter in nature. We see that whereas an engagement survey is anywhere from 25 to 35 questions, pulse surveys, are typically shorter, 8 to 10 question surveys. Regardless, these are snapshots of the culture and your engagement at a point in time. We also believe that a modern engagement measurement or modern feedback program also includes employee experience. Employee experience has been a buzzword in HR the last 12, 18 months. Experience, in our definition, is really looking at the individual employee experience and getting an understanding, indication of what engagement looks like throughout that experience. And so these are individual contributor surveys, new hire onboarding, day 5, 30, 90-day surveys. Also looking on the other side of the experience, so when employees are leaving the organization. And so we won't spend as much time today talking about that, but these are critical onboarding and offboarding type surveys. And there's a variety of in-between performance reviews, 360s that, again, will just get a better sense for, what employees are experiencing in the day-to-day. And then we have an always-on feedback channel, whereas experience and engagement pulse surveys are pulling data from your people. Always on channel is a way that your employees can push feedback to management. So, the engagement survey approach is what we're going to focus on first. You can see here that we are big advocates of an intentional approach, starting with a baseline, then identifying an area that you may want to drill down deeper into. If you've structured a baseline well, you may not, that may be enough. But by using this, definition of engagement indicator model, that will help you drive and really get to the bottom of, where you need to make improvements. And by having this a clear, approach and methodology that you're leveraging, you're going to reduce the time that it takes to go from insights to action. And some of the hallmarks of a best-in-class engagement measurement program are highlighted here. You should have a clear focus on indicators that tie back to your definition of engagement. Your questions should be statistically accurate. I like to say there's never been it's never been easier to deploy a bad survey because of the internet, and it's easy to get questions, but that doesn't mean those questions are good questions. So you really want to make sure you're spending time on statistically relevant and accurate questions. Survey length, you want it to be short enough to drive high levels of participation, but you want it to be long enough that you can stand behind the statistical accuracy of the data. And again, you want to have balance across all indicators. You want your survey to be well indexed and not overly focused in one or two particular areas. So to re-summarize, a baseline survey, we talked about the number of indicators and the importance of indicators. We talked about critical numbers and the importance of having KPIs that you could put on the overall HR dashboard. Then you need to construct your surveys, and you can see here that a modern engagement measurement platform will offer you a starting point to where you will have a statistically accurate and relevant engagement survey. One of the benefits of going with a provider that focuses on specifically this type of work and not just a generic survey tool is that you're going to get the benefit of survey questions and survey templates that have been proven through hundreds, thousands of surveys that have been completed by said vendor. And vendors like Workify can help you drive this process in a way that is going to really give you data that will help ensure and help bring confidence to your process. And you can see here that we looked at the indicators before. Now you can see how the questions nest for each indicator. And, we also have critical numbers and qualitative questions that we can that will give us an amazing data set to work from. So that's engagement surveys. In addition to engagement, we are seeing a trend in a shift really in the market to move to shorter pulse surveys. And again, the idea is shorter, more real-time surveys that are going to reduce the time from insights to action and really help specifically get feedback in an area where the business knows that there are challenges. During the COVID-19 stay-at-home orders, we could see clear themes emerging. And as a result, we developed pulse surveys that would help our clients with their disaster response programs. We also looked at working remotely. We looked at availability of resources. And so these are perfect examples of areas or topics that our clients had to quickly focus on and get data back so they could take action and make the right decision, not only from a timing perspective in terms of driving clarity and confidence with the employees, but also from a cost standpoint to ensure that they weren't sprinting off in a direction that was going to be wasteful in terms of money and resources. Pulse surveys are also great because there are things that fall outside of a traditional indicator of engagement that are really, really important and relate to engagement. Things like accountability, trust, diversity is a big one. We have recently published our 2020 diversity index survey, specifically because we know how important that is given the current events and the state of the workplace. And then we have collaboration and agility. Again, two really, really important themes. Our IO psychology team specifically looked at what questions our clients were adding to our engagement surveys. And as a result, we built templates for all these pulse surveys. So suffice it to say, these are all things that HR groups that do not have a modern program in place or a tool in place are having to do on their own. And it's, as we walk through everything that's involved in building these programs, you can see how these small things begin to add up. And what typically happens is they're not done. And particularly with these topical surveys, these topics are too important for you to not get these done. This is an example of a diversity pulse and how through the solution that we offer, we make it easy for you to craft a diversity survey that really focuses on multiple factors that will give you a better sense and a more accurate data set in terms of what your challenges are related to diversity, inclusion, and belonging. So, the hallmarks of a modern program for pulse surveys, you have the ability to quickly tailor surveys to current topics. You're leveraging a solution that will allow you to quickly have access to templates that provide you with statistically accurate questions that you can modify and channel to your particular business. And so that gives a great overview of kind of the engagement and pulse world. We will in later segments focus on experience and always on feedback. But if you have any questions, you can always contact your friends at Workify, and we're happy to provide more information on those. So as you begin to expand on your business case, some questions to ask yourself are, what is your survey roadmap for the next 6 months, 12 months? Are you planning to do a baseline? Are you planning to do a pulse survey or a mix of both? What are your plans on specific topics? What's important to the business? What are, topical areas that are important to your executives? How are those fitting in to your business plan in your business case for your engagement measurement program in 2021? We're quickly going to run through data and anonymity. I mentioned earlier these are the 201, 301 topics within engagement measurement. But first, the key thing here is that anonymity has never been more important than it is in a modern feedback survey a modern feedback solution and modern surveys. It's just expected. As a consumer, I can go to a number of platforms and submit anonymous reviews. Employees expect to have the ability to do so within the company. With surveys, surveys give you the ability, with the right tool, you have the ability to connect employee feedback to your HRIS data. Usually as part of the service, at least it is with Workify, there is data management involved that makes the process of connecting the data and having what we call a robust data model easy. And again, this is another critical element. Particularly if your executives have felt like they're not getting the reporting and analytics that they're looking for to make the decisions they want to make from the surveys you've done in the past. You need to invest in data, as your data in will have a direct impact on the quality of the analytics that come out of your process. And that really comes back to, do you have a data management strategy in place? And what sort of data dimensions or employee metadata can you capture with the current solutions you're using or the solutions you're looking to use? Because again, a modern program will have the components of both of these: data management and the ability to track the right data dimensions. Collecting data, offering channels that matter to your employees. Again, not all of the free tools out there make it easy to give access to through desktop, email, mobile, and through chat tools. A modern tool, again, like Workify, will give you the capability to collect employee survey data through all of these. And anonymity, you really want to have a statement and position on anonymity. This is ours. Our employees are our focus. Our business depends on employees and their feedback. If we can't be trusted, we can't do business. And so that's why we protect anonymity at all costs. And really quickly, analytics, this again is a topic on its own. Another investment rationale for a modern program is, the days of having the available HR technology, engineering resources, analytics resources, and the budget to spend on all the licenses for Tableau or whatever it may be. Those days are being challenged, and there are solutions out there that will allow you to have a pre-configured business intelligence capabilities within engagement measurement. At Workify, we use Power BI. We're built into the Microsoft tech stack. And so this is a world-class business intelligence platform that's already been pre-configured for you and available so that you can have real-time dashboarding. You can also have advanced analytics and the ability to filter down and drill down into very specific data that will allow you to get really into the weeds in terms of what you need to do to make improvements. And then, of course, scorecarding capabilities are a key component for driving summaries to your managers and really engaging them in the process. And so these are the hallmarks of a modern program in terms of reporting and analytics. And to give you an idea, you may be relying on spreadsheets today, and that's just not going to do it. And if you're fully outsourced, you may be relying on a consultant to provide all this for you. There are solutions in between. Again, we use Power BI that will give you advanced analytics capabilities and in a more cost-effective way that will give you more robust capabilities. These are just scorecards. These are just examples of scorecards that will add value to your business. Trending capabilities, again, really, really important. And this is where, from an analytics and reporting perspective, some of the free tools will start to fall, the rationale for using these tools falls down very, very quickly. And again, the magic of metadata and having that managed within a data model in a modern tool means that you're not having to ask self-identifying questions, and it will allow you through your platform that you invest in to produce the level of heat mapping and reporting that is meaningful for your executives. Then from an action planning perspective, the key thing here is, there are data is, what good is data is if you can't take action on it. There is a lot that goes into action planning approaches. You could develop all of this on your own, or you could partner with a solution that will help drive these strategies and bring that as part of the solution. Again, we're talking a minimal investment to have access to everything that we've already talked about, but also, really help you get data in a way that will allow you to focus on action from a local standpoint within specific areas, and then globally more at a macro level. And that can be very difficult when you are working with data that is either lagging in terms of the time frame that you're receiving it from an external provider, or internally when you do not have a robust data model that you can quickly leverage to cut the data in all the various ways you need to from an action planning perspective. Some questions that to answer here, how is your team going to be focused on supporting leaders and managers in a way that you can drive an impact? Is your HR team going to own that? Do you have a strategy for really empowering your leaders and managers to take ownership of that in a way that will still provide, a collaborative effort between you and your managers? Because ultimately, we are dealing with limited time, limited resources, and this can be a lot to take on if you do not have, again, a modern engagement measurement program in place. This is typically a one-day session that we do with our clients and prospects. If you need any additional help, if you have any additional questions, we would be happy to spend more time with you. And if you're interested in a modern employee feedback and engagement measurement solution, we would be happy to schedule time to demo how Workify can accomplish some of the things that we've talked about. But at a minimum, you should now know the trends that are happening and why, even more so today, it's important to have an engagement measurement program, and how to build a business case for that program. And in terms of getting an allocated budget and buy-in from your executives, you should have a better sense for why this is more than just creating a survey and deploying a survey through a freemium tool, and some of the hallmarks of good program design, and why partnering with the right third party will bring you not only best in class technology functionality, but will also bring with it best practices in terms of survey questions, frameworks, and methodologies that will help you focus more strategically on advising the business on how to take action and interpreting data versus the administration of a process that and program that involves a lot.